Today, Trump was deposed for a second time in the New York State Attorney General's sweeping civil fraud lawsuit. In September, New York AG Letitia James filed a massive $250 million civil fraud lawsuit accusing Trump, his adult children, and his organization of staggering fraud for overvaluing their assets by billions. Trump, before that deposition, he made sure this morning to call AG James a racist, because that appears to be his main line of defense here. Once he arrived at the AG's office, he was greeted with chants of, "New York hates you." And then he spent nearly the entire day behind closed doors, staying inside for roughly 8 hours. That is nearly double the amount of time he spent there during his first deposition back in August. A spokesperson for the New York AG's office said Trump spoke a lot, which is quite different from the last time he was deposed. Just 2 days after the FBI searched Trump's Florida home for classified documents, Trump sat for a deposition where he invoked the Fifth Amendment nearly 450 times.
I respectfully decline to answer the questions under the rights and privileges afforded to every citizen under the United States Constitution. This will be my answer to any further questions.
You are currently the president of the Trump Organization, is that correct?
Same answer.
You knew at the time it was finalized that the year 2019 Statement of Financial Condition contained false and misleading statements, is that correct?
Same answer.
In preparing the 2019 Statement of Financial Condition, Mr. Weisselberg and Mr. McConney worked at your direction and followed your instructions to inflate asset valuations on the Statement of Financial Condition by employing false and misleading assumptions. Is that correct?
Same answer.
You heard Alan Weisselberg mentioned there, Donald Trump's longtime and now former chief financial officer of the Trump Organization. Mr. Weisselberg is currently imprisoned over at Rikers Island for his involvement in the Trump Organization's tax fraud scheme, and he is scheduled to be released in just 6 days from now. We know that Mr. Weisselberg recently changed up his legal team after reports that the Manhattan DA's office may be looking to get Weisselberg's cooperation in its fraud case by pressuring Weisselberg with potentially more charges and more prison time. Now, Letitia James' lawsuit seeks to shut down at least some of Trump's businesses. It could be catastrophic for Trump. The suit is expected to go to trial later in October. And while this is a civil trial, over on the criminal side, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg is still looking into some of the very same allegations. Joining us now is Suzanne Craig, Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter for the New York Times, and Joyce Vance, former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama. Thank you both for being here. Joyce, let me just start with you in terms of the legal implications today of the fact that Trump is speaking in this deposition. Do you see anything particularly meaningful in that?
So it's always a challenge when you have a client like the former president, who I think lawyers despair of having any client control over him, and he answers questions. What will happen now is the Attorney General's office will comb through the transcript. They will see if anything that the former president has said assists their case. But because this is a civil proceeding, they are also free to share this deposition with folks like Alvin Bragg, who may be looking potentially at criminal charges. It's tough to figure why Trump's lawyers would have let him go in and answer questions for more than 7 hours.
Yeah, 7 hours is a long time, Sue Craig. And as Joyce rightly points out, I'm sure Alvin Bragg is interested in what transpired today as well, right? How do you see the handshake between what Tish James, the AG, is doing and the fraud investigation that we hear is a live issue over in the AG's office, DA's office?
Right. I think he's very interested in it. I think a lot of people right now are very focused on what Alvin Bragg is doing with the hush money payment, but there's a very separate case going on into the valuations that Tish James is looking at. We don't know exactly where that is at, but it was very live and well when Cy Vance was in charge of that office a year or so ago, and there's no reason to believe that it's been put off. I think it's right now on the back burner. But if I had to surmise or kind of guess, a bit of an educated guess about what they're doing, is Alan Weisselberg is in Rikers, and he is facing separate criminal jeopardy on a case that actually stems out of the Attorney General's case. And that is some misstatements that he made to Zurich. And he indicated to them at some point in conversations with him that appraisals that he was giving had actually been, backed up with documents that they weren't. He misrepresented, gave them false information, which could get him in a lot of trouble. That's trouble called fraud over $1 million, and he could actually do some hard time for that if that goes to trial and he's found guilty of it. So I think they're trying to apply pressure on him there to get him to cooperate on the potential criminal case that Alvin Bragg could bring forward, and he could maybe get Alan Weisselberg could maybe get himself out of some trouble on that if he cooperates on the other one.
I am always bringing up Alan Weisselberg, especially when you're here, and I'm sort of obsessed with him as the sort of the missing link in all of this, right?
In the hush money case,
he is directly implicated
that.
in the hush money payments
right, and
case.
he didn't come forward on the grand jury on that. I'm surmising because he would have been given immunity, but he could be a witness in that as well. I think Alan Weisselberg, probably maybe more than most people in this country, has a lot of decisions to make about how he's going to go forward. And I can't imagine, he's in his 70s now, that the idea of potentially spending what could be the rest of his life in jail, for essentially protecting Donald Trump, he's got to decide what he's doing. And those are kind of the pressure points on him.
And he could be the witness that these prosecutors need. I mean, Michael Cohen is obviously a star witness, but a lot of people have cast aspersions on his, just using him as a central voice for the prosecution. Weisselberg really is the puppeteer in terms of the financial dealings of the Trump organization. It would be invaluable to Alvin Bragg's case and any other case that involves
I keep
Trump
thinking,
fraud.
too, with Alan Weisselberg, we just don't know the other avenues that he could open up. I mean, we kind of think very in a limited way, well, he could help with the hush money payment. But there just could be other ways that we haven't probably even imagined that he can help. He is the keeper of the secrets of the Trump organization in terms of all the things that are now in play, either civilly or criminally.
Joyce, from a legal perspective, just, for the layman, he is getting out of Rikers in a matter of days. He has changed representation. There is a lot that is being read into why he would be changing his counsel at this juncture. I mean, from your experience, given all that looms over him after even he gets out of Rikers, what are the implications of changing counsel at a juncture like this? Do you read anything into it?
There's been some reporting that suggests that the new legal team that he's now connected himself with is even more aligned with the former president. And that one of the reasons he walked away from the prior representation is because there was a little bit too much conversation about cooperation. We don't know for certain that that's accurate. A lot of this involves reading tea leaves. But one of the enduring mysteries of every investigation into Trump has been the lack of people who are willing to cooperate. I mean, I can tell you that in 25 years as a federal prosecutor, when you look someone in the eye and tell them that they can be a witness or a defendant, they tend to take that very seriously. And many times you will end up with cooperation. When you're looking at a CEO of a corporation and you have CFOs, maybe over a period of years, who've been involved in the alleged fraud, those people will very often want to cooperate to minimize their own exposure to prison. So now we have Alan Weisselberg, who spent some time in Rikers, who could be looking at spending a lot more time in prison. If there's ever a moment where he's highly motivated, it's here, but he has persistently refused to cooperate over time.
Yeah, I mean, Sue, you know who he is as a character in the Trump universe. He's been intensely loyal to the Trump organization. He worked for Donald Trump's father. Does it ring hollow to you when folks suggest that maybe this is just because he's so loyal to Donald Trump?
I think he's incredibly loyal, and I also think there's financial, right now the Trump organization is paying his legal fees, and they've also paid him handsomely over, years and years and years, up to through the trial. I just don't think you can know, though. I mean, I just think it's a real unknowable I think it perplexes a lot of people, and a lot of people think about it because it's just, you can just imagine this man sitting in Rikers and facing
the rest of his life in jail.
I think
or pass, I mean,
or turn on somebody that he's been incredibly loyal to, and just also, I think, imagining the things that Allen Weisselberg would have to admit about himself if he turned, I think, is another thing that's just, this is just such a human decision.
Yeah, a deeply human, an emotional decision.